Hi everyone, my name is Navi. Thank you for being here today with me. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to talk about some of the books that I've read in the last year. I really enjoy reading. It's one of my passions. I love doing it. I love talking about it. I definitely am always talking about it with almost everyone that I meet. So to give you a brief history, I've been reading for a very long time, like I said, and I wanted to keep collecting the books that I've read, kind of like what I felt about it, and that's when Goodreads comes in. So we should be friends on Goodreads for one. And then I did their yearly challenge of reading 25 books. I chose 25 because it averages about to a little over one book every 2 weeks. So I do go through slumps like everyone else. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough time to breathe before I felt like I had to read, because that kind of sometimes takes the fun out of it. So here we go. Thank you for being here. Let me explain the rating system. I kind of go off of how Goodreads does it, where it's all out of five. It's not strictly just it. I also do half numbers as well. So like 3.5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. And I'll be honest with you, I am a little bit of a strict uh, grader in that way. That's not to say that I believe I'm wrong, but at the same time, I think it's a good idea to go with that warning, because I do grade a little harder, and I've been told I'm a little bit harsher, so take it with a grain of salt. And at the same time, this is just my opinion, it's nobody else's opinion. You can agree with it, disagree with it. I completely understand. Everyone has their own opinion on things that they like, things that they resonate with. Sometimes some of our experiences in life kind of make us feel a little different about certain stories than others, so I completely understand that. No hard feelings. Let's get started. So I have my phone. I'm using the Goodreads app because it kind of reminds me of what I've read, and it's a little easier to remember the things that I liked and I didn't like. It's a very short summaries. But if you do use Goodreads, connect with me. It'd be awesome. Let's be friends. So as far as the books that I read, I just kind of go off of how I'm feeling, the things that are presented to me. My wife and I go to Barnes and Noble quite a lot and other bookstores, so there's always so many books on my want to read. And if I can't find something, I'll just randomly click on something. But I prefer to try to at least limit some of the books that I've added to my want to read, which continuously keeps growing. But let's start off with the first book that I read of the year. It was 10 Things That Never Happened by Alexis Hall. I had heard a lot about her. There were other stories that I read with her in by her that I enjoyed a little bit more. I think it was called Husband Material. Maybe I'm wrong, but with this one, I gave it 3 out of 5, only because it was a little unrealistic. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, it'll probably be a 2.5 out of 5, because it was very unrealistic. It was not something that I enjoyed at all. I think it wouldn't have really happened at all. The main character fakes amnesia and says that he has no one basically to take care of him. So the other guy, his boss, decides to take him under his wing, take him home, and takes care of him. And it just was not my favorite. There wasn't a lot of romance, and some of the stuff that the main character does, I do not agree with. He continues to say that he's lost his memory, even though it's there, he's fine with it, but just to keep taking advantage of the other guy. I'm just like, no, that is not okay. All the shit that you pulled, excuse my language, is not okay. So 2.5 out of 5. The characters were blah. The storyline was eh. It didn't really make the best sense to me. So 2.5 out of 5. The second book I read, this is going to be really sad, is The Confidence Effect. I, just like almost everyone I know, I like confidence. So my wife thought it would be a good idea to read this. She had wanted to read it for a while, so I was like, oh, I'll give it a try. I read it. It's not good. It's really not. I gave it like 1 out of 5. I think I didn't learn anything in it that I thought was helpful in everyday life whatsoever. So maybe it's just me and I'm being harsh. It gets a little better, so stay with me. The third book I read was Free Food for Millionaires because I loved Pachenko. It was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of the best books I've ever read. So I really was super curious to read Free Food for Millionaires. And I was like, okay. I'd been trying to read it for a while, and then it always just ended up being pushed to the side to read something else. So I was determined to finish this one. I gave it 4 out of 5. I'll tell you what. The things that I really, really enjoyed. I think the author, Min Jin Lee, please excuse the pronunciation. She has an amazing way of writing. She does a really good job with it. She can tell a story in multiple ways and to make you really resonate with the characters. I really liked that it wasn't just about the main character, Casey Han. It was also about her mom and dad, her community, the people that she goes to school with, her sister. It's a lot more than just about Casey. Now, the 1 star that I took off, it's basically for the unrealistic story that I think might happen for Casey. So she says she wants to do something like this, that, other things, but at the end of the day, she just cannot decide what she wants. I think it was more for the character herself than it was the story. I just couldn't resonate with her. I wanted to like her so much, and it would seem that she would be someone that I really enjoy, but I just could not like her that much. It's like, I don't get you. So that's the only little flaw that I feel is for this story. I really, really wanted to give it 5 stars, but 4 is true. The next book I read was Shiloh by Phyllis, Reynolds, Naylor. I gave it 5 stars. It's the first 5 star of the year. The main character, Marty Preston, is a little boy who sees a beagle and just really wants to take her home, but she's owned by his neighbor, and there's just this really sweet story about people, the characters that we meet, the people that we have different opinions of, and it's a really good story in my opinion. It's a children's book, but it's still one of the best that I've read. So if you are looking for a really quick, nice read that resonates with you and makes you smile, I would be Shiloh. I think it's definitely a 5 out of 5. The next book I read was The Henna Artist. Oh my God. It was so popular when I was reading it. I read it with my wife. We were listening to it. It's one of those things that I so wanted to read like it. Being Indian myself, I was like, no. It has to be great. It has to be wonderful. It's great that it's getting so much praise. It's wonderful. I've been waiting for books that have that are written by Indian American, British authors that I'm like, yes, it'll be amazing. I so wanted to like it. Like, actually, I so wanted to love it. But I gave this 3 stars out of 5 only because I'm sorry, but the story went nowhere. It was just all over the place. The main character, Lakshmi, leaves her abusive husband, and I'll give her credit. That's amazing. And to be able to flourish yourself in this time frame, especially coming from India, I know the difficulties that go in it. I was really, really surprised, and I'm really glad that she was able to overcome all of these hurdles by herself in that time frame. But my God, she was not a likable person. And it was just her demeanor, the kind of stuff she gets into, some of her decisions. I'm just like, I'm sorry, but no. And then they also paint Jaipur in this amazing light, which is great. I think that was, she's really good. The author is really good at painting a great picture, having a great setting. But the story falls very short. There's a lot of plot holes, in my opinion. There's a lot of things that the characters do that just don't make sense as they move forward. Lakshmi just was not my favorite, and I wish that it was a lot better. I still want to read the second book, but it's going to take a minute because I was so hopeful for this book and so excited for it. Maybe because I had higher expectations, it felt quite short. So you tell me what you think. The next book I read was Game of Thrones. I love Game of Thrones. The TV show. I had never read the books, and I had wanted to read them for a very long time. I was like, okay, I'm gonna knock this book off my list as well. It's the first book. I want to see how it goes, and mostly I wanted to. After I finished the show, I was just like a lot of people, super disappointed with the ending, and I was hoping that that would, if I read the book, it'll help heal something. I read the book. It was good. It wasn't great. I love the world building that J.R.R. Martin does. It's a great setting. It's the characters are wonderful, and they kind of do what you expect. The first book goes very parallel with the first season of the TV show, and I'm really glad that I read it. I gave it 4 stars just because even though I knew what was going to happen, it was still a great journey to read. It was a really long book though, so I do plan on reading the rest of the series only because I kind of want to see how it goes different from the current plot of the TV show, but I'm hoping that before I finish the series, well, before I get to the almost end of the books, that the author will finish the series. Let's hope for the best. The next book I read in the year was Hello Stranger. It's part of the Reynolds series by Lisa Kleypas. It's similar to Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series. Those are my 2 favorite historical romance authors, Lisa Kleypas and Julia Quinn. They were the first ones I read when I first started reading those kinds of books. They're still super close to my heart. They're some of my favorite books. With Hello Stranger, it was good. I gave it a 3.5, but not great. It was alright. It was an average book. I really liked the main character. Let me see, what was her name again? Dr. Garrett Gibson. She's awesome. I think if you can picture maybe kind of similar to Bones from Bones. She's very analytical, very honorable, and you resonate with her. Even the main male character was really cool as well, but it just lacked a little bit of more intrigue, in my opinion. It just needed something extra. So 3.5 out of 5, actually. The next one, The Bodyguard by Katherine Center. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people gave this really nice reviews, but it is not something I enjoyed. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. It was just so predictable, and everything that you knew was going to happen happened. It just was not good, in my opinion. It wasn't great, I guess. It was alright. I didn't like any of the main characters either. I liked more of the side characters than I did the main characters. It's a little funny, so that's why it has a little bit of a higher rating than I would have given it. 2.5 out of 5, would not read again. The next book I read was Avatar, The Rise of Kyoshi. I am a huge Avatar, The Last Airbender fan. I watched the TV series, the anime one, growing up, and it was one of my favorites. My heart belongs to Zuko. My kid heart belongs to Zuko. And I just really wanted to know more about Kyoshi because how could you not? She's amazing. So I read it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 because Kyoshi is amazing. I read it within 2 days. It's a pretty heavy book in that, like, there's a lot of action that happens. It's a page turner, in my opinion. There's a lot of world building that happens. It's really, really amazing. I bought the hardcover book, and it's definitely one of my favorite books, and I would so read again. I loved the main character, the side characters. I loved the LGBT aspect of it. I loved even the villain was okay, was good. The only thing that detracted from that 5 to 4.5 was that the ending was so abrupt. It ended so quickly, and they had built up this like villain to up to where it just felt very rushed at the end there, where it could have gone a little bit more. I know there's still the second book, and I understand that, but the first book's villain was just built up so much and then destroyed within a second that it just felt wrong and didn't really match up with everything else. So 4.5 out of 5, but still an amazing book. Would definitely recommend it and read it again. Um, the next book I read was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love her books. She's became one of my favorite authors last year. I read quite a few books by her. And it's something that I always go back to. I know a lot of other people didn't give this the best ratings. I think it had an average of, on Goodreads, it has an average of 4.03. Well, okay, it's better than I thought. It had a 4.03. Oops. I accidentally kicked my camera. It had a rating of 4.03, and I gave it 4 out of 5, which is still a pretty high praise for me. I feel like the narrative is really good. The characters are really amazing. I think the world building is really nice. So 4 out of 5. I wish there was more in depth at the, like, after the 3/4 part. It just feels rushed to find a solution very quickly. That's the only reason I give it a 4 out of 5 instead of 5. The next one is The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. I read Me Before You and I really enjoyed it. I watched the movie, really enjoyed it. Definitely a tearjerker. And I'm sometimes still upset about the ending, even though I understand it as an adult. I'm still a little upset about it. So that's why I wanted to read this, and it was a little bit different from her other stories. Alice, the main character, and Marjorie, the almost second main character, are amazing. My favorite is definitely Marjorie. She's got wit, she's got smart, she's adventurous, she's amazing in every possible way you can hope for in a female main character. Alice, while I liked her growth, I felt that the ending of her character was a little abrupt. It just didn't. Most of these endings I'm not a huge fan of. But even then, I think 4 out of 5 is still a really good rating for me. And then I would definitely read it again, but I'll probably wait a few years just because I want to kind of forget some of the details, so then I come back to it and maybe I'll notice something else and like something else about it. The next book I read was Crying in H Mart. It's a nonfiction book by Michelle. I'm going to butcher this and I'm sorry. Zauner. I gave it a 4.2 out of 5. As you can tell probably, I don't really read nonfiction books. They're just not my favorite. They're not entertaining. And it's very hard for me to get into people's nonfiction books. I'm always like, I don't know. But I read this and I finished it in, I believe, 2 days as well. It's a page turner. It's very interesting. I think she does a really good job of explaining. I really liked the about as well. The backstory, how she connects with her mom, and especially through cooking. I myself love Korean foods and they're amazing. It's amazing. So I really enjoyed that part as well. I love that she tries very hard to learn everything by herself, get connected with her culture. I love that she doesn't give up on her dreams. I love that part. Overall, I think it was a great, great book. I would almost give it a 5, but I think like a 4.25 to like 4.5 is kind of the rating I would give it. The thing I didn't enjoy it was I guess she just loves and respects her mother so much, but I understand there's a cultural difference as well. But I also have an Asian mom. I understand that. But some of the things that the mom does to Michelle, I feel like, come on now. You can't be sitting on top of her screaming at her. Just not okay. I guess I disagree with some of her choices and how much she loves and respects and adores her mother. I would have a hard time with that part. The next book I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I so wanted to enjoy this. It's by V.E. Schwab. I'd heard great things. And to give credit, I think the book is written really well, and I really, really enjoyed the first half of the book. It is a lot slower, so you need to pace yourself. It takes a while to get through. It's a large book. I really enjoyed the first half. The second half, not so much. It does drag, and I'm ready for it to be over by around like 65% of the way through. And then the main issue that I had with it was the main character, Addie. She just keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. I will give her this. She's very steadfast. She tries very hard to live, and even if it is by herself, try to make a living by herself, which is great. And I'm sure I can't imagine how difficult it is. But she just needed more substance to herself. I was more intrigued by the devil than I was by her. I just could not understand how she was. There was always this like sexual energy between them, and you obviously at the end see different things, but I just could not. She was just so much less than I would have thought. I'm sorry, that's really the best way I can describe it. She wasn't as cool as I would have thought. She was just at the end. Moving on. The next book I read was Finding Junie Kim. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's still a great, great book. I would highly recommend it. Honestly, I might change it to like 4.5 out of 5 because it was just so really good. I love the main character. It's set right after the Trump administration takes over and some of the negative feelings around that, especially when it comes to being non-Caucasian. But it's not just about the political stuff. I love that she goes out and she asks her family members kind of like their story, the things that they've been through. So she asks questions to her grandparents, both that had gone through the Korean War. The grandfather's story is really sweet, very heartbreaking in many ways, but also it has a great support system. He is able to get through it. It's the grandmother's story that's very touching. She goes through so much. Perhaps one of the very beautifully strong written females that I had ever met, I have ever read. You just want to know her, you want to get to know her. She's so incredible and so strong that it's amazing. She's definitely one of my favorites, and just for that, I think I would want to give this a 5-star. I really like Junie Kim as well. She does a really good job at being like written as a kid and how you would feel in all of these troubling times, and especially being in a not very open and mixed environment. I think even then she does a really good job with her friends. I don't really like the whole trying to feed you the narrative of the left wing, but I really enjoyed the story, the backstory, and the struggles that her grandparents go through, she herself goes through. I think I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely worth reading, and definitely would read again. The next book I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is my first book by her. I had wanted to read this for a while, and I was like, no, I'll give it a shot. It's been a while. I was ready for a thriller after Junie came. I wanted something a little bit different. I read it. It was okay. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought that it deserved... there just wasn't as much substance to the book. It continues to build up, and then it just kind of flattens around the middle there. You're interested in all of the characters, but the ending was... it was a little unexpected, but not too much. You kind of know what's going to happen. And you understand where it comes from, but it does seem extremely unrealistic as well. So the 3.5 out of 5, but I'm still glad I read it. I wouldn't read it again. The only reason I really kept going was to see what happens at the end. So 3.5 out of 5, worth reading, wouldn't read again. The next book was Tom Lake. The year prior, had read The Dutch House by the same author, and I had many thoughts about it, positive and negative, and I wanted to give it a shot and see if this was different. Gave it a 3 out of 5. I was intrigued by the characters, but they all were kind of, apart from Joe Nelson, the rest were kind of blah and just not my favorite. I didn't understand one of the main characters, Duke, is kind of a jerk, very much a jerk. I understand you're not supposed to like him, but to make him that unlikable is quite something. Lara she was supposed to be this very nice person, but her actions didn't seem that way. She didn't seem like a very nice person. I wanted to really like this book. I liked some characters. I liked the family bonding. I liked how it switched back and forth between present and past. I really enjoyed the storytelling itself. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the characters, so 3 out of 5. The ending was kind of abrupt. I'm just like, that's it? That's what you get? I was like, okay, 3 out of 5. Would not read again. The next and the last book I read was Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. I'm sorry, I butchered it. This was recommended by my wife. She was like, "No, this is a great book. I read it in middle school, I believe, or elementary school." And I do agree with her. It's one of the best books I've ever read. And it's definitely worth reading and rereading. It's a very short book. I would highly recommend it. It's right after or around the World War II with Denmark. And it's perhaps one that I'll remember for a while. It's not really even about just the war itself. It's more the main character, Anne-Marie. She's written in such a great way that you just can't help but like her. This courageous, adorable, sweet, headstrong little girl that you just can't help but like. She's so brave, so sweet. She loves her family, her friends so much, and she just wants to be a good person and be courageous and help the people that are around her and the ones that she loves. She just is amazing, in my opinion. So definitely worth a read. It's very quick. I read it in like 3 hours. But definitely worth reading if I do say so myself. So a horrible thing happened to me, which I'm sure has happened to multiple people. I finished recording and reviewing these 25 books, and come to find out as I'm editing this about 6 hours later that 8 out of the 25 did not survive. Somehow either they were corrupted or it didn't survive it. I didn't press record. I don't know what happened, but they're not there. So here I am 6 hours later recording it again. And onwards we go. It's a good thing I love books. So the first out of the ones that were left were The Peach Rebellion by Wendelin van Draanen. I honestly really, really liked this book. I was surprised by how much I liked it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. The main characters, Ginny and Peggy, were best friends when they were children in elementary. And then this is them as they come back together in high school. I really, really liked Ginny. She's very sweet, very upright. She's very honorable, tries to do the best thing possible. She comes from a family that doesn't have a lot of money, and it's right after, I believe, the Dust Bowl. And they're going to Peggy and her family's farm, peach farm, and they were peach pickers. And that was very much looked down upon. And I think the author does a really good job of portraying both of their characters and some of the struggles that they go through. And then the other character, somewhat of a background. She's also somewhat of a villain in this. At least she starts off as that. Lisette, you start to see some of her character development over time, and she becomes one of my favorite. I love the character development that she has. So definitely recommend. I would read it again without a doubt. The next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. So this was super popular in a lot of book talks. I kept hearing about it, and a lot of people were saying it's a great book, so I really wanted to read it. I love romance books. Usually I prefer the historical romances a lot over the contemporary ones for various reasons, but I read this and I expected so much more and was very surprised by the lack of imagination, the lack of story in this book. It was an average book. I don't understand why it was so popular. I gave it 3 out of 5. I enjoyed the humor in it. I enjoyed the development a little bit, but I felt that it was a story that I had read multiple times, and I didn't really understand how it became so popular. I feel like this year book talk definitely led me astray. A lot of the books that they recommended I read and was not a huge fan of. Don't worry, it's all coming up. So again, it was 3 out of 5. The next book I read was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. As I mentioned before, she is becoming very quickly one of my favorite authors. Any book I've read by her, I've really enjoyed. Sometimes I feel like the story doesn't even have to be amazing. She and her writing is so good that you can kind of forget about the story sometimes. But even then, this one was amazing. I really was not a huge fan of her in Malibu Rising in the previous book, and they all kind of interconnect. And this is Carrie's story. She's come out of retirement as a tennis player because her record was broken, and she wants to come back and give it that last shot that she can do better and be better. I really enjoyed reading with Carrie for throughout the whole book because I thought that she was just, I wanted to dislike her just because on principle, but you still really want to root for her. She grows very much and helps other people in all of the scenarios. So I definitely thought that was a really good story. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. The next book I read was We Could Be So Good by Sebastion. Honestly, I really wanted to like this book. A lot of the gay romances that I've read recently have not been my favorite. It's set in mid 1900s, I believe. And this is still when LGBT is legal, nothing is okay. I really enjoyed the first half of the book, but the thing that surprised me the most was that I expected to like Andy a lot more than the other male character, Nick. But you really enjoy Nick's development, his humor, he's very honorable, tries to do the best he can, comes from a family that really thinks that he should be doing something else and not being a news reporter. So definitely worth reading in if you're looking for an average book. Give it a 3.5 out of 5. The next book, The Fourth Wing, by Rebecca Yarros. I'm sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. It was not my favorite whatsoever. I gave it 3 out of 5. I thought that it could have done so much more. Again, this was one of those stories that I learned about from Book Talk and other people, and they're like, it's amazing, it's wonderful. It blew up, and everyone was raving about it. But I feel like the only reason that it was good was because of the dragons in it. Take the dragons out, and it's a really teenagey story that doesn't have a lot of substance to it. It's, if you've read one, you've read multiple. What I really enjoyed was the author's world building. I thought that was really nice. She does a wonderful job with that, but I could have done without the romance part. I think just alone with the world building, strategies, all of that alone was worth the read. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I'll be honest, if there wasn't the romance part, I would have been higher. There's a lot of sexy time, and I just wasn't a huge fan of that. I expected a lot more, but maybe it's just me. The next book I read was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Again, one of the Book Talk books. I feel like a lot of people that use Book Talk don't read the best books. I've gotten better recommendations from just normal people than any kind of book talk. Anytime I've read books, I've been very disappointed. Very rarely are they good. I read this one. I was super excited for it. I thought that Avery, the main character, would be amazing. And she is in certain aspects, but for the most part, she's just a teenage girl. And there's this weird dynamic with all of the brothers that she has. They basically cannot be in the same room without some sort of sexual energy. And I just wanted the puzzles. I liked the puzzle parts. The thing that I hated was that it keeps dragging on. Obviously, I'm going to read the second book because I have to know what happens. There's 4 of them, but I really was hoping that it would at least end on a decent note and not a cliffhanger, which I hate. So gave it a 3 out of 5. It's an average book. The next book I read was A World Without Princes. It's the second book of A School of for Good and Evil. I really enjoyed the first book. I thought it was a really cool concept. The second book I really enjoyed as well. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I loved Sophie and Agatha. They were great in the first book. They were really great in the second one. This is where Sophie and Agatha both shine. But the biggest thing that I enjoyed about it was the view of Tedros, the prince. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. I really enjoyed learning about him because in the first book, it's very one-dimensional. There's not much to it. But this one shows his insecurities, how and why he is how he is. I like the development that he has. So kudos to that. And I definitely want to finish the next book. I'm just taking a break and we'll come back to it. The next book I read was Date Me, Bryson, Keller with my wife. We listened to it actually. We thought that it was an okay book. We gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Only because Bryson and Keller's story is just very predictable, but also not very realistic at all. I understand it's supposed to be a teen romance, which are not predictable at all. But I expected it to be at least a little bit realistic in its entirety. Their relationship development, how easily the parents of Kai are just switched over. Some of the mystery is just not that great. You kind of already know what's going to happen. It was very predictable and kind of okay. I expected more. So 3.5 out of 5. Maybe honestly a 3 out of 5. I expected a lot more. And my wife felt the same way as well. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm sorry if I rambled on. There are some books that I really enjoyed. Like I said, there are some that I wasn't a huge fan of. I'm already starting this year's challenge of reading 25 books, and I'm super excited to do it. I love reading. It's always been one of my passions. Thank you so much. My name is Navi. Thank you for hanging out with me today.